This podcast is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cuckoldress Lexie Meadows, and welcome back to the Cuckold Marriage Podcast. If you have ever found yourself thinking, why am I into this? Or what does this fantasy say about me? You're definitely not alone. For so many men, discovering a cuckold fantasy can bring about excitement and curiosity, but it can also bring about confusion and guilt and even shame. Some wonder if it means that they're weak, and others worry that maybe something's broken inside of them. Some spend years trying to understand this fantasy that just keeps coming back, even when they wish maybe that it wouldn't. Today, we're diving into the psychology behind the cuckold fantasy, not to diagnose anyone or pretend that there's one simple explanation, because there's not, but to have an honest conversation about desire and identity, vulnerability, shame, humiliation, control, all the emotional experiences that accompany this fantasy. Most importantly, we're going to talk about how couples can approach these conversations in a way that builds trust and deepens intimacy, thereby replacing shame with understanding. Before we get into today's conversation, I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Whether this is your very first episode or if you've been listening since the beginning, I truly appreciate you being here. I know Chris does as well. If you're enjoying the Cuckold Marriage Podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you would follow us on your favorite podcast app, maybe subscribe on YouTube, and leave us a 5-star review. It helps more than you guys know. And if you'd like even more of me, you can check out my Fansly. That's where I share exclusive photos, videos, and behind-the-scenes content. Gives you a chance to see a little more of my naughty side. And your support on Fansly directly helps us to continue producing this podcast. Finally, if you have a question, a story you'd like to discuss, or even an idea for a future episode, please send us an email. You can email us at podcast@cuckoldresslexie.com, or you can just click send fan mail in the show notes. We read every message. Some of our favorite episodes were suggested by listeners. So let's go ahead and get into today's conversation. Chris, you ready?
I am ready. I think this is a really good topic, Lexi, because I think a lot of us who have, and in particular on the male side, when you have the cuck fantasy, it does carry with it a lot of questions about where did this come from? It carries with it some shame, some guilt. There's just a lot of stuff that goes into it. So I'm glad we're able to discuss this together and maybe sift through some of this stuff that goes on in the mind of the cuck and probably the cuckolders, probably the wife too, or the partner. So I'll go ahead and tee us off with some of these questions, Lexi, and then we can kind of piggyback on some of the answers. So I think probably the starting point for this is the question that so many men ask themselves when they're having this experience, which is, why am I into this? Why? Lexi, I know you've had a chance to work with a lot of cucks, and obviously you're married to me. Do you have initial thoughts on this kind of why? And then I'll kind of touch on some viewpoints I have.
Well, I mean, first, I think that there's a reason for the confusion to start with, because I think society says that men must possess and compete and win at all costs, and cucks are aroused by something that kind of challenges those notions. There's no clear-cut answer as to why you have a certain fantasy. We all have our fantasies. We all have the things that we're into and that turn us on. Some people, like you, like blondes. We all watch porn. Maybe we're really aroused by the oral sex portion of the porn or whatever. We don't question those fantasies. We don't, this fantasy brings about a sense of what's going on with me, like, why on earth would I like this? And, I think that men spend years wondering this and not getting any sort of answer because there's no one for them to talk to. And isolation brings about shame. What do you think?
Yeah, I think those are all really good points, especially not having somebody. But I guess what I was going through my mind as you were providing that answer, Lexi, is why is it that certain types of dynamics like swinging don't carry the same kind of connotation or guilt? And I don't know, maybe it's because both partners are playing, so they just feel like it's just totally normal. We're both
Mhm.
getting some side action. But there's not a lot of difference between that and what we do, except for the fact that I don't connect with other people.
And I do think that you hit the nail on the head.
Mm.
Swinging, I think people are more okay with it because both partners are getting to participate and play. And so each one gets the bonus, the perk of getting to do someone else. But when someone is allowing their partner to do that, but they don't have any desire to do that as well, that sense of unevenness and unfairness can cause maybe that sense of why would I like this?
Yeah, and what's interesting is that that sense of unfairness is something that us as cucks actually like. So we like elevating our women and making it a little bit unfair where they have, the best of everything. And so yeah, it's just it's unbalanced, but it's unbalanced on purpose and with consent, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, does this fantasy mean that there's something wrong with you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that anybody should be talking to I think it's a good practice for anybody to have a therapist just like they have a primary care physician or a dentist. At the same time, if you're in these kind of dynamics, I think having a kink friendly therapist is a good idea. And only you can determine whether or not you need to be working with somebody and whether or not you think that your path is a healthy one or not. And you'll know by your feelings whether or not it's healthy, depending on what you're doing. But I think it's always best practice to kind of have a little bit of a sense or understanding of where something's coming from, and that'll help you avoid potential hurt with it and just explore the parts that I think are the most fun in this dynamic.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that having this fantasy means there's anything wrong with you. A lot of men question, they're like, am I weak for wanting this?
Or am I broken? Yeah. I,
Yeah.
I mean, these thoughts do go through the heads of us on the cuck side or on the cuck queen side. I have no idea. I've never really had an in-depth conversation with a cuck queen, but I know that from the male perspective, these thoughts go around our head a lot. Like we're constantly asking ourselves, like, is there something wrong? But at the same time, like I said, you got to be talking to professionals. You got to also be honest with yourself. You got to be honest with your spouse. And if everything feels okay and you're enjoying it, that's okay.
Also, to the men that are asking themselves, like, am I weak? Cucks, we've discussed this before that, you have to be a strong person to give up that control. But cucks also have to develop, in order to do this lifestyle, they have to develop strong emotional communication. They have to face extreme honesty with their partner, with themselves. They have to have or develop self awareness. And they also have to have a lot of patience and resilience. So, this is not something for the weak. This is something for the strong. And people have different reasons for why they might be excited. It's not like there's just one reason. It could be you really like the taboo or the novelty of it. You like the anticipation, you like erotic jealousy, you maybe the emotional intensity of it. Some just really like watching a confident woman of theirs enjoying themselves. So and then there's also just surrendering control. So there's lots of different reasons why this might excite someone, and that's obviously not a comprehensive list, but nothing wrong with you. And I know that sometimes fantasies feel very personal, but your fantasy is just a small part of a much larger person. There's so much more to you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the fantasy doesn't totally define who you are. It's just a part of how you live your life and your lifestyle. It's not totally who you are.
Yeah, your fantasy does not determine your kindness or your loyalty, your parenting, your work ethic, your integrity, or your values. It's simply something that turns you on. That's it.
Yeah. And so if you think about this, why do you think so many men hide this for years, Lexi? Because, so many of the guys that you work with say to you, I can't talk to anybody else about this. They're even afraid to talk to their therapist or whatever about this, but they talk to you. So why do so many men hide this for years? What are you hearing from guys? And, how does it feel just having a guy trust you enough to talk to you about these things?
Well, first of all, that trust is wonderful, and I am so happy that I can be someone that they can talk to. But, I think it's a fear of rejection, first and foremost. I think it's fear of maybe being ridiculed or misunderstood. They're scared to disappoint their spouse or, what is my spouse going to think of me? Is this going to change how she sees me? Is this going to change our sex life forever in a negative way? I think that's why they hide it.
And I think also that, somewhere along the line, somebody may have told them this is wrong. This is, has made them feel shame around it. I know that stuff that I've experienced in my life is just the shame around it, by being told by anybody that I would confide into about it. So I think that somewhere along the line, if somebody tells you that's wrong, that that you're going to be more likely to recoil. And then when I found somebody like you, Lexi, who was open, I mean, for me, the best part is that I feel like I can be my authentic self with you completely and not have to hide aspects of who I am. Because as we just mentioned, your sexuality is one aspect of who you are, but it is an aspect and it's an important aspect, especially in the context of a relationship or a marriage. So having to hide part of that from your partner is can be really damaging and lead to you never really having a fulfilling full relationship if you're not able to be honest about everything with your partner.
Yeah. Why do you think that so many men feel shame after becoming aroused?
Well, I think that, there is that sense of guilt. Your wife is with somebody else. But I think that it's just societal pressure would be, maybe the fear of societal pressure. But I do see a lot of men who, after a scene or something like that, will feel this guilt and shame, will almost retreat from the conversation or around the topic for a little while until they're feeling back. So I do see guys go through a pretty significant drop after this and after a scene is over, after a release or something like that. So just keep that in mind is that after there's a pause in the action, you may feel that sense and just make sure your partner is attuned with that so that you can get the support and aftercare that you need.
Yeah, and guys, remember that shame is not proof that the fantasy is wrong. It's you kind of fighting with yourself because part of you says, "I like this. This is great." But then another part of you at the same time is saying, "I'm not allowed to like this. Society says I'm not allowed to like this. Therefore, this is bad." And, that's the internal struggle I think that a lot of guys go through.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So, what's the difference between guilt and shame in this context? I think that there is difference between guilt and shame in general. Do you think in this, or maybe I can tee this one up because I have some thoughts around this. So, guilt can be a helpful emotion. Shame is not. Shame is just when you kind of hide in the corner and don't want to face anybody. And guilt can help you confront some stuff and maybe correct behaviors that are damaging. And so if you're having guilt around this, I would ask yourself, is that guilt necessary? Like, are you causing actual damage that you need to feel guilty about? And if the answer is no, why do you have that guilt? Shame is a little bit different. Shame is an emotion that is probably going to come whether you're hurting somebody or not. So it's how do you deal with that shame? Lexi, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I agree. Guilt is, like I did something I regret and I feel bad about it. Whereas shame is more like I'm a terrible person. Oh my gosh, I am horrible. And guilt therefore can lead to growth, but shame usually leads to hiding and feeling bad about yourself. One is helpful, one is not.
Yeah, and Crystal Welch has said that cuckolding is eroticized shame, which I think is interesting. And I guess there's a difference between using something that you've been ashamed of or something that has been, for me, like jealousy, like eroticizing jealousy is one of the reasons I do this. But I guess it just depends on how it's surfacing and how much like is it doing you actually damage or not? Because I guess my next question is, can shame actually make the fantasy stronger? What do you think, Lexi? Can shame actually like increase the intensity in a fantasy? Like, could it actually be a good thing?
I mean, that's tough to say. It's possible. This fantasy can, because of, societal norms, can feel a bit forbidden. And when things are forbidden, they tend to lend themselves to secrecy. And when you're the only one in on the secret, it's easy to kind of obsess over it. And then that obsession obviously is going to turn around and make the fantasy more powerful.
And I think that for me, it's not the shame that makes it more intense because I don't got I wouldn't say that's an issue I struggle a lot with is the shame, but the jealousy does make it more intense. So for me, it's not eroticized shame; it's more eroticized jealousy, and I really there is something to that. Like the jealousy does make it more intense. When you are with somebody and I'm super jealous, it actually it's hot. Like it makes me want you back. It makes me want to get you back. And then when you couple that with when you are back and you pull some of your cuckoldress Lexi moves like denial, it like increases it. It just revs my engine even more because then I'm jealous. Somebody had you. I want you back. You make me wait to get you back it's brilliantly played because it really does a good job of extending that fantasy and really just kind of touching my nerves exactly where they need to be touched in order for this to really reach its peak level of excitement. Does that make sense, Lexi?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So where would you think that humiliation would fit into all of this?
That's a really good question because I think a lot of guys like that humiliation aspect, like small penis humiliation or just being compared to a bull. I like the teasing. I wouldn't say that it's crosses into the line of humiliation. I'm not into like small penis humiliation, that kind of stuff. Although when you are with like a super big guy, that's fun. That comparison of like you've been with some like lately you've been with some pretty big dudes. And I've never been into small penis humiliation. I'm still not, but that was a turn on to me. Just you having a guy that just I clearly couldn't like I physically can't do what he did to you. Like there's not possible.
It
Right?
rearranged my insides.
You got your insides rearranged. More on that coming soon. But you got your insides rearranged and it was hot. I mean, it was really hot. And I I uh I don't know about the humiliation, but I really, really like the teasing. But man, some cucks really love the humiliation. It's a big part of their lifestyle, and I think that's great. If you are all playing and you're all being consensual and all being safe and the safe word, like have fun with that. That sounds super fun.
Yeah. And, as you can tell from like our relationship as an example, humiliation is not required to have a cuckolding lifestyle. It can certainly add to it and enhance it for a lot of people, but it's not a requirement. I think some people think it is, and it's not. You don't have to have that level of humiliation to have a really enjoyable dynamic in this lifestyle.
I'm not being walked around on a leash in our relationship, but if you are, have fun with it. Go for it.
Right. So what do you think humiliation actually means?
I think that humiliation in the context of this relationship is just another aspect of giving up control. And I think that's what a lot of us really enjoy is the letting go of control in a cuckolding dynamic. I know for me, I like to be in control of life in general, right, honey?
Yeah, too much
Yeah.
so.
So when it comes to this aspect, it's just kind of nice to just be like, all right, I kind of don't have a choice here. I'm just kind of along for the ride. And there's a certain pleasure in that and also just like a mental relief of not being in control. It's really powerful, erotic, and also in a weird sense calming. So that's what I think is part of it is that letting go of control and part of that can be pretty humiliating depending on what your how devilishly evil your cuckoldress decides to be.
Yeah, I mean, humiliation can run the gamut. It can be playful teasing, which I definitely do with Chris. It's can be a power exchange which is a beautiful thing. The cuck trusts the cuckoldress enough to let her take control. And, I think that you were talking about letting go of the control. I think that we cucks tend to be not always, but they tend to be on the more successful side. They're at least typically like manager level. They have people below them. They're making decisions all day. A lot of them run their own business and everything like that. And so letting go of control and even to a humiliating degree and having that kind of rubbed in his face can be pleasurable and enjoyable. So can someone enjoy the fantasy without ever wanting to live in it?
I mean, that's a really good question. You know, Lexi, I feel like that's even a better one for you because I know with you, you deal with a lot of guys whose wives, like they're open to playing in the bedroom and doing fantasy talk and maybe using toys and that kind of stuff, but they're not willing to take it to the next level. I know for me, I really enjoy the actual living aspect, but look, if at some point in time we just decided to make it just a between us bedroom pillow talk thing, I think I would be okay with that, especially because we've done so much already. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that it's definitely okay for the fantasy to stay fantasy. It can. There's lots of fantasies that do. People fantasize about having sex with a celebrity. They usually don't end up having sex with a celebrity. Public play, they may have this turn on for having sex in public, but they never do it because one, it's illegal, and they are too shy. But it really turns them on. Group sex, some people fantasize about that, but never actually do it. And that's fine. A fantasy is a fantasy. It doesn't require action. Curiosity doesn't require action. And one thing that people will sometimes find is that the fantasy and the reality don't quite match up.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. is if you are a cuck and you've been just swimming in cuck porn, and then your wife finally agrees to do this with you or your partner, your girlfriend, whoever, it's probably not going to look like that cuck porn, especially not at first. I mean, look, there are some people that are intense, and like there are real life things that look very similar to cuck porn. There really are. Like that stuff actually does happen in this lifestyle, but it doesn't happen all the time and it's not the norm. And so I think that it's important for you to temper your expectations and really just think about, it's not going to be like that porn that you're watching. Most likely, it's probably going to be a lot more tame, but it is going to be more intense. Even though it's not all that stuff that you see, it's going to be intense when you do it.
So you've been thinking about it. But turning fantasy into reality takes more than curiosity. It takes direction. I work with couples and individuals to guide you through the conversations and dynamics that make a cuckolding relationship actually work. Those first conversations and introductions to your fantasy are especially critical. Done right, it changes everything. Done wrong, it can break it. If you're ready to do it the right way, book time with me at cuckoldmarriage.com.
So, what do you think? I'll ask you this question. What do you think happens when a spouse responds with curiosity instead of judgment?
Oh my gosh, when a spouse responds with curiosity instead of judgment, it is like that is music to my ears. When a spouse just shuts something down and basically tells you, no, this is terrible, it leads you to, I mean, you shrink a little bit and your voice kind of goes away. You're more careful about what you're going to bring up in the future. But the fantasy might not go away. So like that's a problem. Now, when your spouse or your partner, when I brought it up to you, we were really new in dating. I mean, we were only dating for weeks when I brought it up to you.
Yeah.
And your response and when we finally sat down and talked about it, it was just asking a lot of questions and talking about limits, talking about, what my fantasy had been, and we started and I think I played it well in the sense that we really kind of started off a little bit, and I didn't know what I wanted it to be. So we started off as Stag Vixen, and I was super happy with that and just naturally progressed into this. And I didn't know I probably would have been happy if we would have stayed Stag Vixen, but this is even more intense. And this is pretty wonderful, but it's all because you responded to me with curiosity and openness and willing to just be game for trying different things, which I think that partners on both ends should learn from that. Like, unless you're causing somebody harm, physical harm or something like that, or putting somebody in a dangerous situation, try things. Try things with your spouse. That might be this fantasy, might be something else. Just, you only live once. And if your spouse has a really strong desire and it's something that you think that was in the realm of something being reasonable, give it a try. Why not? Life is so short.
Yeah. And I think, for all the possible spouses listening out there, when your partner finally is able to open up to you and tells you their fantasy, they're clenched. Their butt is clenched. They're like, holding their breath. And this is your moment to shine. You can do some real damage here if you hit it up with what the hell is wrong with you, as opposed to, okay, help me understand. Tell me some more. Showing up with curiosity instead of judgment can make or break everything. And judgment makes people hide and feel shameful, and curiosity makes people apt to explain, and then you learn, and it may be different than what you first had in your head. So you staying curious and asking more questions and keeping an open mind allows you to get more information that you need in order to maybe make a yes, I can totally do that decision, or I'm not going to be that kind of girl. So that's important.
So what have we learned about ourselves in this dynamic by being open and all that stuff? I think that's a really good question. I think
Besides that you're my little bitch.
wait, say that a little bit louder.
We learned that you're my little bitch.
Yes, we have learned that I am your little bitch, and it's a good time being that. Uh, I think I've learned that I can trust my wife with my emotions, and she doesn't ever slam them or make me feel bad. And, whenever I share a new idea with her, she's pretty straightforward. So if I come up with an idea, sometimes she's like, yeah, let's try that. Sometimes she's like, nope, never gonna happen. And I've become, accepting of that because she's so cool with everything else, and she's just so open to talking. There's nothing I can't really bring up with her in regards to this aspect or really anything else because she's so open to hearing feedback and just ideas, and she's so game for everything. So I think what that has taught me is that I really, and I already kind of knew this, I really respond well to very strong women leadership. I think you're a powerful woman, Lexi, and it's not only a turn on, but it's just an honor to be married to somebody who's just such a badass. Honestly, what have you learned about
Sure.
yourself?
I coming into this, I didn't know the sort of dominant power that I had within myself. I had done some cuckolding in a previous relationship, but it wasn't the same. And so I had obviously discovered some of my power there, but I really discovered a lot more in me during our time together. And I feel like we have a ability to be intimate and discuss anything that's on our minds sexually. And yeah, I think that not being judgmental toward each other has been an important thing. I mean, I can't even imagine if I had been, bitchy about it when you first brought it up and just like how it would have just kind of crushed your soul a little bit. So, I'm glad that we have the sort of open communication and non-judgmental zone that we make a bubble around ourselves where we're just not judgmental. And I think that that's important for everyone out there to try to adopt, especially when someone is confessing something that's maybe a little hard for them to confess, that they are feeling a little vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, you're confessing, one of your deepest, darkest, I don't know if it's dark, but your deepest, darkest secrets and desires. And of course, Lexi, I would never get onto a global podcast and express this, right? But
Yeah.
but it's just so nice when your spouse is just understanding, and it could be a no, but even if it's a no, if you're cool about it, if you're understanding, if you say no, but like what can that other but be like, what can we do? I think that's so critical because it just you don't want your partner to shut down. Like I think like that's the death of many relationships is when somebody shuts down and just stops sharing those intimate things and those intimate thoughts because those intimate things and intimate thoughts are still happening in your head. You're just not sharing it with your spouse anymore. So now you're living this almost separate relationship where you have your sexual fantasies in your head. Maybe you're living them out through cuck porn on the side. When I could be engaging my partner in that in some way.
Yeah, and I think that, compromises sometimes are necessary and especially in this lifestyle. I most of the cucks that I've talked to, although it wouldn't be their dream, it wouldn't be ideal if their partner never hooked up with someone else physically. They would at least be satiated if the fantasy was role played out and it became a part of their sex life, and maybe not every time, but regularly, so that they do get to live out their fantasy at least that way.
Mhm.
And so I think that that's a reasonable compromise. I think that, I mean, I can't speak for other women, but I think that, just like our partners maybe do stuff for us sexually, we need to do stuff for them. And engaging in this fantasy every once in a while would probably mean the world to these guys that are bashfully trying to tell us what they're into. So there's, in other, realms of humiliation or just other fantasies, BDSM, like everything, there are always compromises to be had. It doesn't have to be, yeah, no, I don't like that. I don't like that idea. I'm not into it. It's not my style. I'm not going to go with it. There's usually, not always, but usually a compromise that can be had.
Mhm. Yeah, I think we should do a whole episode on just like ideas of ways that you can cuck your partner without sex being involved because I can think of about a million things that are like super hot. I love when we go out to bars. And when we go out to bars, we almost at least Lexi almost never wears her wedding ring. And so she gets hit on. And like to me that's super super fun. Like to me that's as much fun as the bedroom stuff a lot of the times, especially if it's cool and you're like dancing with the person, you're into them. I think that's super hot and it doesn't have to involve the bedroom because the good majority of the time you're not bringing people home. I mean, it's you have
Hmm.
to find the right person, but you are always down to like dance and talk and like that kind of stuff with another guy. So like and potentially like make out with somebody like that's so much lighter of a lift than taking somebody home. So there's a lot of ways to act this out.
Yeah, and you absolutely are in hog heaven, I don't have to go to a guy's hotel room for you to be, like, just drooling.
Totally. Oh my gosh. It is like my favorite thing to do is when we go out to just like a vanilla bar and I get to see you just have fun and be hit on. I love that. That is like that is my favorite.
And it's so nice because it takes the pressure off of me. Like, it's not fuck a dude or it didn't happen, fuck a dude or you're not doing my cuckolding that I want you to, honey. There's all different levels. There's different ways to do it. And so the fact that he gets turned on by even times where I'm not actually with a bull or anything like that makes life a lot easier on me.
Yeah, it really does. And so guys, just keep that in mind. So Lexi, if somebody listening asked you, and this is kind of taking it full circle here, if somebody listening, wrote and asked you or asked you on a coaching session, what's wrong with me? What would you tell them?
Nothing's wrong with you. Not a damn thing. People like this fantasy for so many different reasons, and none of them are wrong. And, sometimes you can ask yourself, what is this fantasy kind of what is it giving me emotionally? Trying to drill down and seeing, like, what is this fantasy doing for me can also help you to have a clearer picture of yourself. And so you're asking, basically, what can I learn about myself? And that's getting really deep into it, and I do like doing that, but, some people don't wanna get that deep into it, and so to them, I say, it's a freaking fantasy. There's nothing wrong with fantasies, as long as they don't involve children or animals, like, basically creatures that cannot consent, there's nothing wrong. We all like different things, and we don't need to be judged for it. We don't need to feel shame for it. It just comes naturally to us, and it doesn't explain anything else about us. There's so much to us. We're so multifaceted. There's a million things to us, and your fantasies are just one itty bitty little speck on all the things that make you up.
I agree. I would tell them if somebody said, "What's wrong with me?" I would say, I mean, nothing if you're referring just to this fantasy. Like, if that's the thing that you're super concerned about, I would say probably nothing. You probably just have, like, a thing for this fantasy. And, like Lexi has said, there are so many different fantasies out there. But what's interesting is that, and when KD from Kink 3D was on, he was talking about, was he talking about clips for sale? I think he was talking about clips for sale, that website where you can buy porn clips. And I think he was saying chastity was like one of the top search terms and cuckold was like right behind it. So not only is this just a fantasy that you have, but it is an overwhelmingly popular fantasy that most people don't talk about. So you are not in the majority. You are with millions of other people that have this exact same fantasy. So keep that in mind as you're going through this. All right, Lexi, can we turn to a listener question?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we got one question written in from the great state of Minnesota, and it says, "My wife and I appreciate your podcast. We are new to this, been dirty talking cuckolding in the bedroom for a few years, and now we are trying to set up the first bull. Good for you. Over the last year, we went to a kink party. My wife has been dressing sexy and posting on FetLife, and will go out sometimes in the evening dressing sexy. Been increasing chastity as well. Our issue is finding good bulls, but even more trying to figure out friendships in the lifestyle. We are busy and have a family life that has to stay vanilla. I think my question is more how to make friendships and connections in the lifestyle without the immediate pressure of play. I mean, we are starting to play slowly, but it would help to have a couples or friends, and that is a hard thing to do at at a party at the link party we went to. Finally, how do we check
Kink.
at the kink party? Sorry. Finally, how do we check to see if a potential partner has tested clean? So, Lexi, do you want to take on the friendship part? Because I know recently, like you made a female friend. You have a new female friend that we met at a lifestyle club. So can you just talk about like how that works? And I mean, we've met other people that we're cool with within this lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly going to, lifestyle clubs. That's how we've met different people that we've been friends with. Usually we're more just acquaintances, but I have a really nice girlfriend that I met. We met. when we were out not too long ago. I think we did an episode about it. And, she and I are still hanging out to this day. As far as, so, I mean, I do think like that's the place that I know to meet other couples who are in this lifestyle. And then you can also meet couples at, house parties, kink house parties. But you mentioned, how can we make friends without the immediate pressure to hook up? And that one I don't have a good answer for because different people are going to be different levels of cool. And everyone's there for the most part to potentially meet a person or a couple. And so it can be very difficult to basically be like, hey, I want to be friends, but let's chill and, pump the brakes on hooking up immediately. But saying something to that effect might behoove you because, and, what you can do is, not everyone is expecting to go home with you that night. So try not to think that everyone is just like already got a hotel room booked. They've got champagne on ice at home or something, not everyone's going to be like, okay, tonight's the night. Let's do this. So if you're not comfortable hooking up that night, that's fine. You can still be friends with them and be like, well, we usually take more time, before hooking up, where we actually have an early morning tomorrow or something like that to let them know that you are still interested, but that you're not ready to fuck immediately. Chris, what do you think?
Y- I think that approaching folks in those kind of situations, whether that be in lifestyle clubs or at parties or you're at Splash or anything like that, I think that that's important. I think also, I found it harder to make friends or find people that are into this same exact dynamic because normally when we go out, it's people that are more in the swingers dynamic. So it's hard to find people that are exactly like us. But there's a lot of Telegram groups out there. There's Facebook groups, and I'm talking about ones where people interact as more. Yeah, we talk about kinky shit on those things, but it's also
Community.
it's community. It's community. People support each other. So one minute, in these groups, people will be posting pictures of essentially cuck porn, and then the next minute, somebody will be asking for questions on like a medical situation they're having, and I really like that because I've seen people come to support each other, but also like, okay, now we're playing fantasy. Okay, now this person actually needs some advice on one thing or another. And so what you have to do is you have to see them as a human being first, not just a sexual object, not just okay, this is I'm living in a cuck porn. We're all human beings and see them as a human being first, figure out what they're into. Maybe the couple shockingly has interest outside of the bedroom. And you'll probably find commonalities in that. So, treat them like humans first, and you're probably going to have a better time making friends.
Yeah, and the last part of that question was,
Rhyme testing.
yeah, it was how do you check to see if a potential partner tested clean? And I mean, there's not a nationwide database, that's you check by asking for test results. It's awkward. It's never fun, but especially if you're wanting to go bareback and not use condoms, it's a necessary conversation. And you just have to be prepared and decide ahead of time what your response is going to be based on their response. Hopefully they have test results that are recent, but if they don't, then you have your answer. I don't know any better way to find out if someone is clean.
Yeah, you just have to ask. Well, Lexi, this has been a great conversation. If there's one thing I hope that everybody takes away from today's conversation, it's that having a fantasy doesn't define who you are. Curiosity is healthy, and shame doesn't have to be part of the journey if you don't want it to. It might be fun for you. That might be part of your thing. Thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow the podcast, leave us a 5-star review, and share it with somebody who might need to hear this conversation. And if you'd like more of Lexi, join her on Fansly for her exclusive content. And if you're looking for coaching, also you can visit at the same place. You can get to Lexi's Fansly or her coaching services at cuckoldresslexi.com. We'd also love to hear from you, so send your questions to us at podcast@cuckoldresslexi.com, or in the show notes, you can just click on the link that says send fan mail, or you can send us a message via text, or you can actually leave us a voice message, which we really enjoy. So until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you on the next episode. You want to say bye, Lexi?
Bye, guys.